Remember, we give away free Switch games each and every month. All you have to do is leave comments and be subscribed to the channel, and keep your eye out on those sales videos that happen each Sunday. A thanks to Sega and Atlas for the review copy. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is a complex, time-traveling, cross-dimensional adventure featuring huge kaiju and real-time strategy battles. Having seen this recently compared to Persona, which it's nothing like, if anything it's closer to Back to the Future meets the excellent Japanese cyberpunk Megazone 23. Developed by Vanillaware and published by Atlas, the team faced several challenges to bring the game particularly to the West, due in no small part to the pandemic. And I can certainly see why developer George Kamitani described the game as truly recklessly ambitious. Thanks to the publisher for the review copy. Is this one full of time-traveling tropes? Or perhaps it's ahead of its time? Well, let's find out.
For different weapons.
As you might have already gathered, the narrative follows the titular 13 Sentinels, but moreover their pilots, who, to avoid spoilers, let's just say don't inhabit necessarily the same time or place. The story segments are intertwined, and once the game opens up, you can choose whose path to follow next, with further ones becoming available when certain prerequisites are met. As well as this, you'll find story flashbacks, but the predominant location is in 1985, beginning with what first appears to be a shared dream, within which they're pictured fighting against huge kaiju within the aforementioned Sentinels.
All we can hope for is to protect it to the end.
One of the game's biggest successes is how well it manages to keep the narrative coherent despite those 13 different characters. One way they've done this is to apply a theme to each one. You'll notice references such as the Men in Black, E.T., and they run parallel to real-life references such as the catastrophic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it's a testament to the writing that it manages to be both serious but equally humorous across its cast, which does feature a talking cat. Why wouldn't it?
In case you haven't noticed, I'm a cat.
Gameplay itself is divided into 3 clear sections. Remembrance, which is the story-focused adventure segments, where you'll directly be able to control those characters. You can move at a walk or sprint around, with areas of interest being highlighted. While most of this is used to push the narrative forwards, there's a reasonably interesting investigatory mechanic which sees you able to store thoughts within a cloud, and then later access them to interact with other players, questioning them on the specific topic, or equally to internalize and think over on each one.
Professor Doji's here?
It's an interesting technique clearly used to keep a real strong focus on the key ideas and themes that are currently playing out. It does well to reinforce the story elements, and had the game been more linear, it would have been a touch shallow. I would have suggested perhaps some red herrings in there, but they've opted for every thought to be essential to progressing the game, perhaps to avoid the very real risk that it could become an overcomplicated mess. And despite a few times where I found myself running just to find the next text box to click on, these characters are so interesting and sometimes funny, you really do want to find out what happens next. With these characters being the pilots of these huge Sentinels, that's where the next and slightly unexpected component of the game comes in, that being the semi-real-time combat. They've opted for a simplistic top-down view of the city, and each battle will take place in a 2km by 2km square. Before you enter, you can spend any experience points that you've gathered upgrading your different Sentinels, improving their abilities, and then assigning them either an offensive or defensive role. Your aim is to defend the hub, which is located at the center and which is also heavily tied to the story. If it's destroyed, then it's game over. Sentinels come in different types, which are essentially the game's class system. This allows them some different abilities. Some may be more ranged, while others benefit from getting up close and personal. While they have a HP gauge, they also have EP, which I can only guess is energy points, and that's used for their skills. If they want to restore that, they're going to have to enter defensive mode. There's also a special ability bar that powers up, and this allows for a one-shot, very often last line of defense move that could be the turning point in a battle. Now you can switch between your Sentinels using the trigger buttons, and then you've got a choice of actions. You can move them, use one of their action skills, defend or repair. Repairing's an interesting one because it means you have to move away from the combat area. The pilot will disembark and that repair process will begin. However, in this moment, the pilot's incredibly vulnerable, a single hit causing them to die and it being game over. During this selection process, time does seem to freeze, meaning you can carefully select which abilities or move you want to do next, hence the semi-real time. As far as the flow of combat, I thought it was very good. It's very fast-paced, and there's a strong emphasis on using the right Sentinel for the job. Where it's not quite as successful, and perhaps a matter of taste, are related to the visuals. The super simplistic nature means it's very quick, it's clear to see who you're controlling, but when you're battling huge kaiju, I can't help but feel they missed a trick by not making it look like an actual battle was taking place. This could have been a real spectacle, and although it's completely explained by the narrative, with the pilots having to create a physical nerve link with their mechs, it's definitely strange that they're all butt naked. Despite the misgivings, I do feel like combat works. It's not overly difficult, and it's a tad light on the strategy part of RTS, but it's really fun, makes sense, and it's easy to pick up and play. If you do want a harder challenge, you can always just opt for the harder difficulty mode when that presents itself. After a successful battle, you're given a ranking. If you manage to achieve the coveted S rank based on the amount of damage the city has received, as well as your own units and any repairs that you've needed to do, then you'll gain some mystery points. These you'll find are used in the final section of what makes up the 3 elements of gameplay, that being analysis mode. To all intents and purposes, it's a vast log of information about every character that you've met, every main component of the story, but some of these will be locked away, and through using your mystery points, you can unlock and learn more as you go. It's a nice, if slightly pointless way of getting you to push towards finding out everything about the game's lore. What 13 Sentinels does so well is to combine these 3 elements into a game where no one ever outstays its welcome for too long. As we'll see in the next section on visuals, performance and audio, that's a large part of why it works so well. Gameplay could certainly be more complex in some areas, but the story writing, the experience gaining, and those fast snappy combat segments I found really enjoyable. Gameplay scores 18 out of 20. Controls are decent. There will be a few times where you're aimlessly wandering in search of one thing to click, but they score 16 out of 20. Now, I believe the game runs using some CryEngine technology. I know it uses Cryware, but I'm not sure exactly what components. Regardless, visually it looks terrific and it performs brilliantly. Frame rates are silky smooth. There are some more advanced 3D lighting effects despite the 2D animations that, combined with the excellent parallax work, make for some incredibly striking scenes. The bombardment of a Japanese town leaving it in flames, or the colossal mech that comes crashing down to Earth, it's all accompanied with a fantastic soundtrack. Fun fact is that the audio team for the Western release,
Single Sentinel rivals aircraft carriers in terms of power.
Actually had to work throughout the COVID period and used a conference calling program to record their audio. And I can only imagine the nightmare that Vanillaware had trying to clean that all up and get it sounding as crisp and good as it does. Voice acting across the board is very strong. Strong enough, in fact, that I didn't feel the need to switch over to the Japanese voices. That's certainly a rare occurrence, but that's here for those who choose it. At first, I wasn't convinced about some of the animations, but as I've played through, they've grown on me, and there's a lot stylistically speaking, which in isolation wouldn't look overly impressive, but layered like this gives real life to some of these cities. There's a diverse range of characters, including the cliche busty nurse, the scrawny pretty boy, and the gruff, in air quotes, tough guy. The tropes are strong with this one, but thankfully still likable. Visuals in handheld are also very good, and performance the same. Text size is reasonable, and while I couldn't comment on whether it has 3D surround or not, it certainly has some form of faux 3D, with footsteps passing off screen and then entering behind if you have a surround sound system. I think it has a beautiful art style, and I give visuals and performance 19 out of 20, while the audio also scores 19 out of 20. 13 Sentinels is a full price £49.99 release that has a physical available that can be had for slightly cheaper. Certainly here in the UK you can buy it on Amazon for £42, and I'm sure you'll find other places. If you're going digital only, it has a download size of 4.3 gigs, and you're looking at around about 35 to 45 hours of gameplay. While length certainly doesn't equal quality, 13 Sentinels has both, and running as well as it does on the Switch, it's a really good place to play it. Everything works so well together that some of the slightly weaker gameplay mechanics are less of an issue, and if you're even remotely interested, I'd suggest this as a pickup. But it's been out a long time, it can be had for around about £20 on other platforms, and it's up to you to decide if playing it handheld is worth that extra cost. Still, I give value 16 out of 20.
Now let's go!
13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is a successful combination of genres, part visual novel, part RTS, and with enough narrative punch to keep you hooked. It gets a SwitchUp score of 88%. Nice one. Let us know what you think of this game. Are you interested in picking it up? I know so many of you said, will you review it? I wasn't actually going to, but yeah, so many people were like, please can you? So here's the review, and hopefully it's of some help to you. Big thanks to our patrons and to any of you that leave comments down below. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!